So I wanted to tell you something because I've been thinking a lot about this conversation tonight, but going into it. And so we mentioned that event we had last Wednesday. So we had like people, David Hoyne, like the women from Pastas, the players around town. And I always think about like Ryan and Leanne Benz and what they're doing, right? And they're cementing that area. But the Eat Local, it's almost like a movement that you've created right now, right? Because what you do is like you're an ambassador for the entire industry, like people that work in it and that live for it, right? But I feel like I don't know if any other cities have something like that. It's like this really great central hub, like one of the reasons why we love your Instagram feed, but because it gives you great information, but it's like celebrating all the stuff that's there. And I think now during COVID, we need something like that more than anything. So
Yeah.
it's really
Thanks,
incredible
man.
to see what you do.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's Chris Fowler had Syracuse First. He had that going for maybe a year when I started, and that was a big deal. It still is a big deal. People still, even though it's kind of not doing a whole lot, but it's still people reference Syracuse First all the time.
For sure.
When I first started, I was trying to find things that existed like it in the country, and one of the things I found, which I'd love to get to one day, a little bit more, and that is it's Low Country Local First. They are far more. They started out kind of the same way, promoting locally owned food in any shape and form, but now they're far more into advocacy and like politics.
Yeah.
And helping to raise money for a lot of agriculture and also restaurants. But
Sure.
yeah, so I'd love. I mean, there's 1,000 things I'd love to do with this, one day,
Yeah,
and we're getting a little bit closer and closer each day. But yeah, man, no, I appreciate that. It's fun. It's fun to meet new people in the industry and see what they're doing. John Page is going to be here in like an hour and a half, and I mean, it's exciting to see. In the beginning of the pandemic, right after they opened, there were people taking bets on how many weeks before they were going to be out of business.
Yeah, for sure.
And today he has, I'd say, probably one of the best branded across all levels. I mean, anything and everything you do at Three Lives is on brand.
Yep.
There's nothing that's like, oh, our loyalty pro. We just kind of threw that together. We forgot about that. I mean, everything is on brand with Three Lives.
I agree. It's mastery in terms of the way you do that because, a lot of places when you're launching a brand, particularly, I mean, I don't know, this is my first pandemic, actually. I shouldn't say particularly during a pandemic, right? But staying on brand sometimes becomes like a hodgepodge, tape it together, let's hope this thing stands up.
Yeah.
And their reputation, like, you know what? I was getting coffee today at Recess on Montgomery and just making small talk with the woman that was next to me, and she was wearing a Three Lives hoodie.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so you like Three Lives? She's like, oh my God, I'd love to hang out there. It was the type of thing like, I mean, it wasn't a plant, you know what I mean?
Right.
But it was that's when you know a brand's really kind of driving the right way.
Yeah.
It's cool to see.
Yeah. So there's a lot of cool stuff that's popping up here. And, and it's in the beginning of the pandemic, I've always said, and I'm starting to change it, and I'm feeling more and more guilty every time I talk to people, I say this, but Syracuse to me has always been 4 or 5 years behind Buffalo, and Buffalo's a decade, let's say, behind bigger cities.
Sure.
But especially, like New York and all that kind of stuff. So Syracuse has always been like, yeah, we do it our own kind of cheesy, way here. But Syracuse has changed a lot over the past year. I've said it more than a few times recently. I've been driving around downtown and I see people walking around and they've got a certain style or they're dressed a certain way, and I'm like pausing, like thinking, what are you doing here? When did someone like you come into Syracuse?
Oh yeah.
And it's starting to reflect in our businesses. Nectar Espresso Bar down in Wildflowers. That's a cool little spot.
Oh, I'm obsessed with Wildflowers. That change, sometimes I feel like it was happening before COVID, but I feel like sometimes with the pandemic, that seems like a different era,
Yeah.
And Syracuse at the time, I think, was the only city in New York State that had grown in population. It was like 0.01%.
Yeah.
But a bulk of it is people like, I'd like to think people like us that are like engaging and trying different things, but more people living and moving downtown, supporting the type of restaurants there. And the fact that some of the places are still, I mean, you have places like Dinosaur and Possibilities, they're going to be fine. I mean, I shouldn't say be fine because I'm
Right.
sure it was a struggle, but the machination of their machine was just well tuned enough where they could handle it.
Yeah.
But the fact that a lot of places have survived or at least like worked together to stay alive, I think means nothing but the best for this whenever this thing ends. You know? I mean, if we're back to normal by 2023, that would be awesome. I mean, as back to normal as we could be.
I know, it's so crazy to think about.
Right? Like, that's insane.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to, it's only going to get better and healthier, but it's this type of stuff that you're doing and that other people are doing too to kind of drive that forward and kind of keep the faith alive, because it's tough, man. Like, I did some work with Laura Surway before Lacey's closed, and she was like shorthanded, and I was like, she's like, you want to come in? And she's like, I'll pay you in tequila if you want to come in and work on the cold line. And I'm like, I like tequila. And what are you going to do, fire me? So when you're in there, though, you saw people coming together to kind of support these things, but no one had ever really dealt with this type of thing before. So, like, some restaurants were smart where they would set up these almost conveyor lines. Like, we're going to have just 4 items tonight and become super efficient in it, where other people had to kind of mess around with that. And then you had, like, you want to get wings, but you're sending them home in styrofoam, or they're getting soggy. It was a really kind of a thing a lot of people could have given up on, and they didn't. And I think this is kind of keeping people from giving up.
Yeah, it's been a wild year. I mean, what has it been? Almost 2 years now, right? March will be 2 years. It's been a wild 2 years to see all this. And it's funny you saying like maybe 2023 it'll be over. I remember it was the Saturday that the St. Patrick's Day parade was supposed to happen, and Tyler and I from Nostalgia Chocolate were recording a podcast, and
Right.
both of us are sitting there saying, maybe, in 2 weeks, it's not that big of a deal. It'll be 2 weeks. Everything will be back open. I edited that podcast a month after that, and just thought about how stupid and that was.
Yeah, but I mean, but you didn't know, what I mean?
No, yeah.
I mean, nobody knew.
Right.
It's funny. You think about like Nostalgia Chocolate or all these places. We had a couple drinks with Michael Speech last week, and it's cool to see those businesses doing well because of the supply chain stuff. So last weekend, bro, this is like a highlight of my, at least definitely a highlight of 2020. Or 2021? What? 2021. Yeah. Sorry. Highlight 2021.
Yeah, 2020. Yeah.
So we got a guy that we know is a fishmonger in Oklahoma City to send us a 4.5 foot long alligator. So we butchered the alligator, and then Saturday we like deep fried half of it and smoked it with a bunch of alligator legs. And it was an awesome time. Everyone was like vaccinated and chill at this little party we had.
Yeah.
But getting ready for it, it was just surreal because when's the last time, like, I mean, what we like to do, as you do too, is just throw a banger. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you really can't do that now.
Right.
And I don't know if we're ever going to be able to do it the way that we used to do it.
Yeah.
Will masks become normal? I mean, I don't know. But microbreweries are doing well, so it's good to see some people fighting through it, but we're all kind of stumbling and fumbling our way to figure things out.
It's definitely an interesting time right now in restaurants, especially in the area, with like the mask mandate that came back out last week. A lot of people were freaking out over that. A lot of owners were freaking out. I think a lot of them are just gun shy that the mandate leads to another orange zone, yellow zone sort of restriction.
Yep.
And talking to a lot of the owners, I was talking to a few of them today. I've got 2 clients that are crushing it right now. Like, they just broke 2. They've been in business for over 5 years. They just broke 2 week-long records of business.
Oh, that's awesome.
And one of them was just this past week.
That's awesome.
Just absolutely crushed it. Most of them are down right now for like over the past week, and it's because what they think is the mask mandate. It's not because people are saying, I don't want to wear a mask, or I don't want to do, it's aside from like everybody's debate over vaccinations or masks or whatnot or whatever.
Right.
It's more so the customers are thinking, all right, if there's a mandate, then maybe it's more serious. That's cool. We can stay home and order takeout, or we can stay home and cook an extra couple nights this week instead of going out, and that's prevent. So they're all worried about that right now, and they're kind of on this verge of almost wishing that there was, from a couple I talked to today, wishing that there was a shutdown, because what happens is, in my opinion, public perception there's not as much talk today as there was a year ago of we've got to support local businesses. We got to get out there and buy takeout and order drinks and buy gift cards just because and all that kind of stuff. Right now, it's just there's a mask mandate.
Yeah,
and so it's like the crazy local support that they saw in the early days of the pandemic. They're not getting that right now.
Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see what happens after Christmas.
I'm curious too, because I think that some of the like the consumer behavior sometimes is driven by, okay, well, this mask mandate has been put in place, so clearly people are concerned about something, so some of them will stay home just to wait and see what happens.
Right.
But you're right about the idea of supporting local businesses. So a couple weeks ago, I was wearing the shirt that one of our friends who has a chef, a restaurant owner podcast in New York City, great guy, gave us his shirt, and it's just all black that says restaurants can't work from home. So I was having a beer. It's a cool shirt.
Yeah.
I was having a beer a couple weeks ago downtown, and someone's like, "Oh, well, that shirt's not important anymore." I'm like, "It's as important as it's ever been." Like a lot of these, but people kind of have fallen into this thing where it's like, "Oh, the restaurant industry is fine." It's not.
Right.
And there's so many places, not just restaurants, but regular businesses that are trying to hire.
Yeah.
So one thing I'm hoping happens too for the people that work in restaurants and all food service. Well, I guess any job, but people are like the swings coming back where business owners like, oh, I don't know if I just can't afford to hire people. I'm like, you can, because you got a huge loan from the government, right? So if you want to stay open, you're going to need to have people that are in there.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that kind of creates more of this cycle, but it's interesting how much like a human being is a super weird critter.
Yeah.
Like we can get upset about things, but after a while, we can get conditioned to really deal with a lot of different things.
Yeah.
So sometimes I feel like people are just like, oh, well, this is just the way it is. I'm like, it shouldn't be this way. So I'm hoping you're right. And I think that, at least around here, people are good people. It'll come back.
For sure.
Like they'll support that, but it's hard.
There's a lot of owners who have scooped up old restaurants and properties during the last year, and they're opening their second, or some of them are opening up their third or their fourth or their fifth. And a lot of them are opening up in like spring or like late winter, early spring of 2022. And I cannot wait to see what comes out. I mean, Danny and Adam Weitzman are doing the old Grimaldi's.
Yep.
I forget when the date of that's opening. Jeff Canals and Adam are doing the diner out
there. I think they're working in a sushi place or something else too.
Yeah. Kyle's doing the Tap House on Walton.
I'm pumped about that.
That's gonna be. I've seen the walkthrough of it, the 3D. It's
incredible.
Yeah, it looks pretty amazing.
I was the other day after I was having a drink downtown, field research and all.
Yeah.
Was walking by. I'm like, I'm gonna grab a cheesesteak before I go home, and there was a huge line in there.
Oh yeah.
Which was totally cool because I'm like, I'll come back another day because there were so many people in there. So that's exciting to hear. There are a lot of places. So those guys are doing it. But what those guys do is they set a stage and inspire other people to get involved with this. I mean, you have a podcast. You have other people coming in here after this. You've got all these things set up. People have to like set an example and come out and say, here's what we're doing. Even if it's creating content to share or to go and celebrate these new places, it's important that it becomes the cycle that, I mean, you and those guys are working hard on. And a lot of those places, I mean, you're talking about people that they've made some money and been successful, but you're putting a bit of a risk into the game here. But the more that do it, the better off it's going to be. A rising tide raises all ships.
Yeah. Yeah, and the concepts that are coming out are different from what Syracuse has seen in the past.
Yeah.
They're exciting. They're brand. I mean, I cannot wait. It's one of my, and she's sitting right there, one of my favorite restaurants that doesn't exist is Sugar & Co. that Kristen used to own.
I did not know you used to own that place. Are you serious? That's awesome.
Sugar & Co. was, without a doubt, one of my favorite spots in downtown.
You know what's so funny about that spot is around the time, I got to think of what the year was, but somebody once said something to me, because I was talking about Sugar & Co., and then another place that is still open now. They're like, oh, well, Syracuse is a chicken parm town and a surf and turf town. And I'm like, that's bullshit. Don't talk like that. Like, there are really great places for people to try new things and do things. The actual market here is people are spending more money. They're getting younger.
Yeah.
It's more experimental in the way that it should be. So that old guard, I'm glad it's kind of getting passed along.
Yeah.
Because even this summer, saw people trying and dropping new menu items. And when Kasai opened, I remember at some point being like, they have like like baby fried octopus bombs. I'm like, yeah, they're fire, dude. And they're like, oh, I don't know if they're gonna sell here. I'm like, once someone has a bite of them,
Right.
they're gonna come back.
Yeah.
You know.
So the tap house is going to be the description I have is a combination of the Tusk and Sugar and Co. It's going to be like elevated. It's going to be like comfortable, fancy, kind of like Sugar and Co was.
Yep.
But he's going to be doing 1,000 tap lines or whatever the hell it is that just like Tusk had, and doing good food out of there. So
I've heard that's a good description of Sugar Co because it was class and nice, but it was also approachable.
Yeah.
Like the vibe kind of just overall in terms of as a consumer, right? As someone that loves to eat and drink, it had that type of vibe that Possibilities has where you feel cool and like you're kind of like a cool person, but you don't feel like anyone's being pretentious.
Right.
You know? So that vibe would be welcome there because the Tusk had that. I mean, the Tusk really delivered that. Yeah. You know?
So if anybody's listening and wants to partner with Kristen on Sugar and Co., you can email me here and I'll put you in contact with her. Yeah, no, I'm really impressed with the way that the food scene has developed here in the city. Yeah, man, I just can't wait to see all this new stuff coming out next year.
You know, one thing that I'm pumped about that you get to see more of just because of the nature of what you do and like as this ambassador for every place is people are coming up with more and new inventive ideas. So a little while ago, one of my, the Veo scooters that are around.
Yeah.
One of my homeboys got a couple of, he bought a couple of Segway scooters that look like the Veo ones. So we basically made a little pack and we're just driving around, going to different microbreweries in these scooters. Now, first, people like honking and waving at us, and I'm like, oh, they think we look so cool, but they're really like, look at these tools over here. But we were popping in these little microbreweries, and the competitive nature of it, one of the places, Eastwood Brewing Company. It used to be Double Barrel Brewing Company. So we roll in there, and they had this like coconut. It was a chocolate coconut stout, and the ABV was only like 4.5%.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was like, all right, so let me try this, and it was incredible. So I was asking this woman that works there, and she's like, well, here's the thing. All these microbreweries that are popping up, they're pretty collaborative, but it's driving like inventive ideas. And I think that's going with the food area too, because people are going to try different things, but the more creative, competitive stuff, the better it gets.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that this community here is being really good about that. You know?
Yeah. Tim at Buried Acorn especially has that view, which we're drinking their beer tonight. Thank you, Timothy.
Which is fantastic.
Tim has said that for years. He loves seeing new breweries pop up in Syracuse and Central New York because he feels like it brings more people into the scene to try craft beer, and in turn that brings him more customers.
And you're seeing collaborations between these breweries.
Yeah.
And all those places too. Buried Acorn is obviously they make really good beer. Like they had Chainsaws and Kittens.
Yeah.
Which I mean, I would just buy those as many as I could because it's a low ABV beer. I mean, I'm not gonna say I always do this, but if I'm going to binge drink, I'd like to drink a good beer, and that's a good one for it. But the vibe in that to a place, or talking cursive, there's different places where they're all, again, like that approachable, inclusive feel, but it's still kind of cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The way that actually good local-owned coffee shops feel. So you can go to different places, and I don't know, when I was way younger and I lived in New York City, you go into a different place and you would talk about another place you ate at, and they're like, oh my, that's terrible. Here, it's different. Like, and I'm sure it's different there now too, but you go into Buried Acorn, I'm like, yeah, I just had a great beer at Willow Rock. They're like, oh yeah, the Congress is great. We love that. So now it kind of encourages this thing. And I think many of the users, like, to me, I mean, the beer industry, cocktail industry too, but the beer industry in particular, the craft beer industry is full of promiscuous users, right? Yeah. And promiscuity is the name of the game. So the more that's encouraged, the better everyone's going to be. And I think from the food standpoint, that's cool too. Like, I've never, ever, ever been in Kitty Hoynes and ever mentioned to David, like, if he's like, hey, how you doing? I'm like, oh, good. I had dinner last night at like Lemongrass, and have him ever be like, oh, why are we there? Instead, he's like, oh my gosh, they're prime. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that is important. But I think also too, like, your existence and other people in the area are doing their best, and we're trying to too, to share that, right? It's important to like continue collaboration on so many different levels. Like Wildflowers, one of the things I love about that, and like the Salt City Market. So both of those places are about collaborating on creativity, right? And you have different vendors and creative people together that kind of push each other. And the Salt City Market, that place, besides the really important thing is it's creating generational wealth. Like, I have never gone in there to have lunch or dinner, and I've always gone in like, you know what, I'm going to go in here, I'm just going to get just a banh mi, or I'm going to get the dope like fried mac and cheese bites, and that's it, because I don't want to like eat too much.
Yeah.
And I drop like $60 because I got to try this, or someone walks by with that. I think that is where we're seeing this great healthy growth, you know?
Yeah, it's really, really cool to see the majority of. I think that's one of the things I can struggle with sometimes, is being really ingrained with, which I'm starting to notice it now, and I try not to get too close to some of the owners or chefs. But I can get too ingrained in the behind the scenes side of it.
Definitely.
That then, I kind of lose sight of the fact that, like, listen, I've got followers that don't care about the behind the scenes, or I'm going to talk about something that's going to go over their head, or whatever the case is.
For sure.
At the end of the day, we're trying to just promote places that we can get people to go out and eat at. And sometimes they don't always want to hear they're struggling. They just want to see the picture of their amazing fried mozzarella tower.
I think you do a great job of, one, not really showing favoritism, which is hard, because there's a lot of things that, you and I both know that you're just like, oh, dude, these are the best wings in Syracuse.
Yeah, I'm glad you have that perception, because I think that I post too much about the same place.
I definitely don't think that you do. And I think about that a lot, because even the stuff that we're doing, and, it's more of like food brands or liquor companies we might work with. But in this situation, you're not doing that. And what I also think that's really good about it too is the average user. Like, one thing I'd love to do, and I know that a lot of restaurant owners would be open to this, would be to have like some kind of food contest about different things. Because there's some things that different places make, and they're super different versions. Like Alex, my partner, he loves the chicken parm at Possibilities, and it's obviously very good.
Yeah.
But the chicken parm at other places too. Like, I'd love to get some people around and like kind of have a battle and just see how it goes.
Yeah.
It's just it's cool, but you guys are really, really, really good about that, because it's hard.
Yeah. We tried to do that earlier last year with Hoagie's Heroes, and I need to find another co-host for it, and we're going to try and revitalize that, because I love that show. I need another person that looks like me to do it. So that way I don't have to hire an artist for the cover art. But those were fun. We did, and those got incredible attention. We put out the best 5 tacos, the best 5 cannolis, and those are some of our bigger posts that people were.
Those were awesome. They were awesome. I also think though, like when you did stuff during the election with different people, you're able. You're crossing the lines that kind of need to be crossed, because I imagine if this thing continues, COVID, into 2023 or some crazy thing like that, there'll be more money coming out. But you're able to kind of be this unofficial ambassador on both sides of that. But again, like that content was awesome, because it ranked stuff, but it wasn't listicle style.
Yeah.
And it kind of celebrated each one. Like, it wasn't like, hey, this is number 5, it's terrible, don't eat it, which I think is really good, because there's a lot of products around here, like chicken wings, obviously. But the taco game, too, is getting ultra competitive.
It is. It's, there's some great, like, Tex-Mex places that are popping up in Syracuse. And, there's Guadalajara. If you judge my favorite restaurant just off of dollars I've spent there in any given month, then Guadalajara would be my favorite restaurant. Just because that's awesome. It's fast, it's good, it's cheap. The people there are super friendly. It's super clean, and they're for Tex-Mex. They're doing a great job there.
I'm super embarrassed because I always want to be transparent. I haven't eaten there, but that's not my fault. Alex, whenever we're shooting and hanging out, I'm always like, we got to go there. He gets takeout. He and his wife get takeout from there like every Friday.
Oh, really?
So I'm like, yo, dude, we're just filming a couple episodes. Like, let's grab a couple beers. And he's like, sorry, dude. My wife not getting that tonight. So I haven't been in there, but everybody raves about it.
Yeah, it's solid.
And it's a different setup than like Panchitos or Exo or all the different ways that people are just slinging tacos.
Yeah.
And a lot tacos too are a thing that like I think there's tons of room for creativity on it.
Yeah.
I like one of my favorite places. I mean, I have like 5 or 6 favorite wings places depending on the mood, but you're not really able to truly reinvent the chicken wing right now. Like I had a peanut butter and jelly wing actually the other day that was pretty
really?
inventive.
From where?
My friend made it.
Oh, wow.
So it was like a peanut butter jelly sugar after you fry the wings and really melted it so it was sticky but not. You ever have like they call it like grandma's sticky Chinese wings?
Oh yeah.
It was kind of like that but more peanut butter forward.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So for a while the trend was all like the dry rubs like Cajun or like salt and peppers, which are awesome. But tacos, you see all sorts of crazy things, and there's nothing makes me happier though when you eat something and it tastes awesome, but also for me it's always like, why didn't I think of that? That's such a cool idea, you know?
Have you ever seen the documentary? It's called City of Gold, and it's about Jonathan Gold, who was an LA Times food critic, and he's since passed away. I think maybe the year of COVID or the year before that. But he James Beard award-winning, food critic, extremely talented, but he was I forget the name of the street that he went up, but at one point in his life he like took an entire year and hit every single restaurant on the street that went from like downtown LA out to the coast,
Yeah.
And so anyways, but Jonathan Gold's his name, extremely talented writer, but in LA in this documentary he's going to this like trying this taco truck that has octopus and sea urchin roe tacos. And
that sounds so good.
He was known for trying really, especially with Asian restaurants, really exotic foods, and so and also in his writing for making it really approachable for people. And so he would he started off one by saying, if you're like me, you've often found deer penis to be really rough to eat. But at this restaurant, they've made it really delicious.
It's really fantastic. It's really tender here. I see that story makes me happy because now I'm going to have to go look that up. I was talking to a friend of mine that I'd like to get your thoughts on this. So you think about people like that, or like someone that we look up to a lot for their impact on the food industry and their incredible storytelling is someone who ironically would likely hate our show. I mean, he might like it towards the end of his career, end of his life, but like Anthony Bourdain, like Kitchen Confidential, I think is one of the best things ever.
Yeah.
And he was not a big fan of like the cooking show style that we kind of bring to the table. Mm-hmm. As he got older, he kind of changed on that a little bit. But I wonder about these people like Gold or Bourdain. And I think about people that have been in the game a long time, like Kat Cora. They've seen an industry that shifted dramatically. So now, with an industry and a world, it's not just the food industry, but a world that's in crisis, I wonder what those guys, those men and women would think about like right now. Like, I mean, I wonder if Anthony Bourdain, I mean, I would imagine, I can't see a scenario where he doesn't think that what you're doing is awesome. But also sometimes you would hear him talk shit about Bobby Flay or like different people like that. It's like, I don't know, the guy's just trying to like cook up some tacos, dude, be an Iron Chef, So what do you think? How do you think those guys would roll with all this?
I don't know. I mean, I've always had a really romantic view of people who do things better than I do, especially
me too. Which is everybody basically.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
For me.
And I think that way of like Amano.
Oh, good.
I can't.
Good place.
I mean, Amano is the one restaurant I've said is my favorite of anything in the city.
I've heard you say that.
The creativity that comes out of there, not to mention just the hospitality from that family, is beyond anything I've ever seen anywhere in Syracuse, and it's always consistent. The first time I ever went there for dinner, we didn't make a reservation, and I didn't really know Alex. I think I had seen him like once or twice before, but he happened to see me out of the kitchen, and so when we were, I think Rebecca was with me at the time. But so when we were leaving, though, we didn't make a reservation that night. Yeah. So when we were leaving, he walked up to me and shook my hand and said, "Don't ever come in my fucking restaurant again without making a reservation."
I love it.
And so I just have this really great respect for everything he does. Whenever we go there, I don't order. I just say whatever Alex thinks I should have.
Yeah.
He'll send out like 5 additional things, and we just went for our Eat Local Christmas party. There was 4 of us, and
Sweet.
there was he sent out like 4 appetizers and 8 entrees and dessert, and it was just stupid the amount of food.
Yeah.
And everything was amazing. And there were a couple dishes that I was just blown away by, trying to figure out how in the hell you got something to taste that good. I've said this to him. I don't want to get to know him. I don't want to become so close to the Fiacchi family that I'm one day invited over for Christmas or anything.
Right.
I want to keep them on the pedestal that I have them on.
Totally. You don't want to meet your heroes.
Right. Exactly. And so that's kind of how I feel. Some of those old school people like Bourdain, like, they had, while they still got it, they still viewed it as, and I view food as an art form.
Me too.
I don't view it as, Cody Dedishu and I, who is an extremely talented chef, had this discussion on a podcast, and he thinks it's a craft. He thinks you can show up every day, and if you put the time in, you have the right tools, that you can anybody can do it. And I'm, no way. There's some people are born with that God-given ability, and some people aren't. And the people who are born with it should be,
doing it
in that place. And I think this is probably a bad example, but I was talking about this with Abigail Henson on her podcast. There was this time of like 4 years ago, I had the most, and I'm sure you've had them too. You have like this really vivid dream, like you remember every detail.
Super lucid, yeah.
You wake up and you kind of feel like comforted, but you also kind of like miss it's like, fuck, if I could just go back to sleep.
Get back into that, yeah.
For 5 more minutes. So I had that type of a dream, and it was this really strange dream. But when I woke up from it, I had this undeniable just knowing that I needed to get on a plane and go to Hamburg, Germany. I had no idea why. I just knew that I had to go to fucking Hamburg, Germany. And to answer the questions in your head, no, I didn't go to Hamburg.
You knew I had. I was like, what?
But it's just like this experience. I could never explain it in detail to anyone to have them get the same feeling that I had from that dream.
Yeah.
I don't even remember today all the details of it. I just know that I had to get there. It's like deep sense of like knowing it was just for me, this dream, this experience. Those are things that like you appreciate, but I think probably shouldn't be shared with the world. My wife, I shouldn't share, like you're married, you have this beautiful intimate relationship with this partner.
Yeah.
You don't want to share all of the details of this relationship you have with your partner with everyone else.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. There's 2 things that you said that I kind of agree with you, but not entirely. The first one I'll say though is the craftsman, craftswoman, craftsperson versus the artist.
Yeah.
To me, I think it's a blend of the 2 because I don't know, like in my life, working in advertising and then, into this stuff now, I would often sometimes find later in life, like, oh man, I actually have a little bit of talent in this. I should have been doing this 2 or 3 years before that. Mm-hmm. So I think it should be a blend of the 2 because sometimes the craft person approach will unlock something. But I get where you're coming from with that. Now, I also agree but disagree a little bit about, I don't want to be sharing my wife with anybody, so let me make sure that's on the record. But the experience though, like, so one of my favorite things I like to do is like we're meeting out for cocktails or like remember like we were hanging out with you having a beer outside of Kitty Hoynes, right? So later that day I was maybe that time or maybe it was the time we were on Walton Street when the streets were out there. But I was meeting up with her because she wasn't with us yet, and I remember walking into the back entrance of Kitty Hoynes. I don't know if I was supposed to back then during this thing, but I did, and I heard her laugh and a bunch of people laughing across the bar. So I'm walking around the corner and I see her basically holding core and telling some joke. which when she listens to this, it's probably a joke she stole from me. But seeing her like kind of, I don't know, like I get what you're saying. I don't want to share all of those parts because some parts are just for us. It's like Tom Hanks in Saving Private Ryan when he won't tell the soldier about the rose bushes.
Yeah, great example.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I still think there's some things too. Like one of the things I think about that you and I and Alex were having a beer, which we were supposed to meet for like a beer, and it turned into like 3 beers. And we're just like telling stories, right? When you're around that, you want to tell other people about those type of stories,
right?
But there's a fine line. Like you talk about these restaurants, like Amano is a great example. Most of the time, places I like to go, I mean, all the time, I'll eat something that they're making, and I'll think to myself, like, nothing makes me more upset in eating in a restaurant or getting a cocktail and be like, I could have made this better.
Yeah.
It's not about the money necessarily,
right?
But it's that type of experience.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the same with these things you're talking about sharing, you know? So it's an interesting approach because somehow it's all working. I mean, the network that you've built is pretty insane with a lot of funny people, and they're willing to share this stuff. I mean, you have these breweries like Buried Acorn, people that are sharing different recipes and ideas. It's a really cool time. But I also wonder, too, like, where is the stopping point, you know?
Right.
Like, I'm not sure. I haven't asked him, and I probably... Well, now I'm going to. I'd like to ask David Hoyne, like, yo, can you just throw me that recipe of like the cannonballs? You know, because those things are ridiculous, and I'm sure I could reverse engineer it.
Right.
But I know that you've done this too. You've had something in the restaurant, like, oh, I'm gonna go do this at home, and you try like 7 times, like it's getting worse each time.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a struggle.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think Anthony Bourdain, if he were still alive, he would probably be the same version of himself, and the content that he put out would probably be the same today as it was at any time during his career. And you know, those are things that I think that's probably the best example of content that can be produced is something that leaves. I mean, you know, anybody who's passionate about Bourdain,
yeah,
you know, that's kind of like that's the best case scenario for when you're creating content, what you would hope, at least what I think I would hope someone would get from watching it. Now, obviously, not all of our stuff is meant to be that way.
Right,
you
for
know?
sure. But you do have a lot of adventurous shit, which is kind of what that's all about, what he was all about.
But, you know, so the stuff that he put out is just, it's meant, you know, that's like the height to me.
Yeah.
But there's different content serves different purposes. No one is probably going to watch a why am I blanking on her name? Who is the a Mario Batali video or Emerald or whatever it is. Who is the chef that got married? Amberell.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to watch an Amberell show and get the same feeling as they were from Anthony Bourdain's show, cooking show, or food show, or and I forget her name, but she wrote Fat, Salt, Acid, Heat, and the Netflix document show that she put out. So I don't know, it's just different content for different purposes. I think it still all highlights food and talks about the scene, but nobody's going to do it that good.
I think you're right, but it's good that we have those standards to kind of go off to, because that Salt, Acid, Fat, Heat is such a great book. One of the book, I think the Flavor Bible is a great book for people that are trying to cook. You can match different stuff up. But someone had to discover all that shit. And when you're talking about these other people, there's a couple of people like I think about. I don't know why, because I feel like they would be interesting to see hang out. But I think about if we go back in time and get like Julia Child at her like heyday, and Ben Franklin, because my man used to drink a ton of beer and love the party. Be like, hey, listen. You guys are going to come with me, and we're going to go bar hopping and food tasting across Syracuse.
Yeah.
I would love to hear, like, some of their, like, Ben Franklin would have walked in the Tusk and seen, like, a quote from him on the wall and be like, yeah, this place can get it, But I wonder about that, because I also think it's funny. One of the things that I love about, like, your content or other people that I don't know, like we know you, but I'll hear them say something and be surprised. Like, I heard Snoop Dogg talk about a record that he was actually, that's not my favorite album that this other group made. It's fun to hear people have opinions that differ than yours.
Yeah.
That's kind of what makes it exciting. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
So it's an interesting time because there's such a, and now, depending on what's going to happen, I think there's going to be even more of a desire for this type of content.
What do you think is, locally, 2021 highlighted the need for local businesses to be able to get in front, get eyeballs on their content, on what they're posting, what they're creating, what they're putting out there. And for you as a content creator, because, one thing that I hope to do and help to cultivate in Syracuse at least is a stronger influencer community because, our scene locally, businesses, we still have some Instagrammers who reach out to restaurants. Hey, I'd love to come out and highlight you if you want to cover my meal.
Sure.
And they get told, why are you trying to blackmail me? Stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's two parts, but I feel like you and Alex create, in my opinion, the best quality content in terms of food related promotions here in Syracuse.
Well, man, thank you so much. That means so much. And if it's good, it's because of Alex. He's a pretty great producer.
Yeah.
So
very talented. Yeah.
I got a couple actually questions about, or a couple answers to that. The first one about the need and what made us think that's important. The first one is anecdotal, but this one I've heard multiple times, and I know you have too. And it's really a marketing thing for anything that involves people's time. Is I cannot tell you how many times I would reference a restaurant that I went to, and people are like, "Oh my God, I forgot about that place."
Yeah.
Right. As soon as that happens, that becomes a problem. For places that I tend to haunt, and like I'm a regular drinker at Kitty Hoynes, but there's places that I don't have to get reminded of. Right. So that's one aspect of it. The second one though is some places they open up an Instagram account and they'll have some followers and their Facebook page and everything like that, but it doesn't share the actual experience that you get in the restaurant.
Yeah.
Right. So I think about places like I don't want to keep talking about Kitty Hoynes, but at Lacey's when they were open, like I know some people that talk about Lacey's not from the food standpoint. The food's good. That's not me saying it's not, but like how people got engaged at that restaurant, right? Or like the first time they met someone they fell in love with. So the second part is not sharing of that type of experience, which I think that's what really draw people into that. Like there are great meals in my life. Like you were talking about Amano's. At Amano, I'm sorry, and all the places that you've been to, we were talking about like deep dish pizza places. We there's a lot of great food that you and I can look back on and think like if I were to ask you what your favorite steamed clam experience, I'm pretty certain you're going to drop a dime on me. That being said, though, most of those things come down from the experience around that, right? Yeah. And sometimes the food was good, but actually it was better because of the time you were having with your wife or your boyfriend or your friends. Yeah. So I think a lot of that needs to be shared. And I think what also happens too is the celebration of the culture of it and the food is something that, like the bring together of that celebration, though, is what you guys do that's critical, right? So when we've done joint things with other places, besides people that have, had us, sponsored us to do like content about products or things we're including in there, a lot of the collaboration stuff is things based on relationships that we have. And we do that based on when the need arises or something's driving into that. But you are the only place that I think is fully driven on really growing those relationships. So those smaller influencers, and we're a small influencer too, the TV thing helps us with our awareness, our brand awareness. But the smaller influencers, they're trying to do the same thing to an extent that we are. But they're not, and we aren't either doing the stuff that you are at a greater level, and that's connecting the community. And there are organizations here that do. You mentioned Syracuse First, the Onondaga Historical Association. All of these organizations are really, really huge, but they're trying to do everything for everybody.
Yeah.
And you're one of the places that champions that because other people around town, all the people that work in this restaurant industry that love it, that care about it, I mean, their day job is to also keep their business open.
Right.
So being like the guardian angel kind of from the content standpoint, we were once talking, I think we were actually talking in a commercial kitchen. You were giving us a tour of it.
Oh, yeah.
And you actually made this really great point about kind of like the barstool sports of food, but more so from a direction of just creating a community versus just marketing and selling a community.
Yeah.
And that's always stuck with me because you want to be a part of a community. There's nothing wrong with buying a membership at a club or something. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that at all. But when you can be part of a community where you feel welcomed into it, and that's what you're creating. And I think those younger influencers, I hope they're seeing. I know they're seeing this, but then like, hey, we should try more of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's been interesting really to see over the last 6 years how many, not just Instagrammers and influencers have come into Syracuse and popped up, but then how many businesses trying to get into the food space have popped up and gone away, and especially when it comes to like promotion. And just recently, a couple months ago, or maybe last month, I reached out to a few of the Instagrammers in town. I said, hey, I don't think we've ever all gotten together. Michael John Haggerty used to get a big group together when he was working at the Hotel Syracuse at 11 Waters, and that was fun. But I said, I don't think any of us have ever gotten together. So we got, I think, 6 of us together at Danny's Steaks for a special preview before they opened.
That's awesome.
And, the group of us there represented 60,000 followers. And they were all posting about Danny's Steaks. So I think, we're going to try and cultivate that more, especially in this next year, and just get them together more, try and get more of them together at different local restaurants and help them kind of grow their influence, but also just grow their opportunity.
Well, you've helped us do that by making introductions. But, you just brought up something that's really interesting to me. You're talking about the total this whole conversation is interesting, but you're talking about like the total number of like audiences, right? 60,000 or something, right? That's a big number. One of the things that I find to be interesting, like you, and there are others, but you do it mostly in this area. Hey, you want to be in the show, or you'll post something like for us, you posted something on Instagram stories and you're like, yo, get these guys in the show, right? So you're doing that to try to let the audience have a voice too, which is huge. But I think sometimes with the different influencers, like we've had people say to us, well, how'd you guys end up on TV? And we'd be like, well, this is kind of how that happened. And we've asked other people like, hey, how'd you end up doing that? And with YouTube, which is our, that's basically where our content, it is, where it lives and where we promote it, right? Like we'll have videos that will get like 20,000 views, another one that gets like 100, right? And you're like, what's the rhyme or reason? So YouTube's not going to tell us that, but other influencers do. So you've kind of helped foster that conversation because you know what? I have not seen. Actually, I have seen it once, but I won't get into who that is. Talking with another creative person and influencer in this market, and have you ask them about that, and then be like, "Oh, I'm not gonna like." I see you as competition. It's like, look, which is what you've been preaching this all along, is make this a hotbed of this food culture, this creative culture. And sharing that type of stuff. So you're actually actively doing that, and I think so many of these people appreciate it because a lot of the young influencers. And they're probably better than I am. They're only younger because I'm 44. You know what I mean? Like these 22-year-olds are more talented than I am anyways. But what they do is they don't know what they're doing, and they're not trying to scam free meals, or they're not, maybe they're trying to be famous, which is totally okay. But they genuinely want to know. They want to get better. Like if you tell them, hey, you should use this type of lighting, or you have pale skin, so you should use some more makeup if you're using this time, whatever it may be, right? They're willing to listen to that, but not a lot of people, with the exception of you and a few others, are willing to tell them that, Yeah. So I think that's kind of part of what you're fostering too, because you want to grow all these things. I do too. All of us do, but you keep talking about amplifying those voices, right? And this great community that can only happen by more people sharing it online. No one. I mean, as an advertising person, if I were a restaurant right now, I would not be spending money doing TV commercials, right? I mean, you'll get a lot of overspill, right? But people now trust these influencers. Like, I guarantee you've heard people say, "Oh, I went to this restaurant because I saw this on this podcast," or I've had other people send us a note like, "Hey, we love to do this project with you because we saw you on this." I think that third-party validation, to get back, I know I'm super long-winded, to that earlier thing you asked about, that is what you're doing and what we need more of.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Yeah, it's true.
We didn't talk about anything that I thought we were going to talk about tonight, and I need to have you back on soon.
Love it. Would love it.
Because I really want to talk to you and Alex. Hopefully he'll be doing better and everything.
Definitely.
So maybe February or something, you guys can come back on, because I really do want to talk about. My intention was to talk a lot tonight about Spatchcock Funk, how you got started, how you do it, your thought process with it, all that kind of stuff.
Let's do that. Let's do that in February, because it'll be fun to be with Alex here, and he'll probably fact check much better than my version of the story will be. That would be awesome. But I mean, the fact that we got to be here and I mean, be disciples of the mission that you're doing with bringing these people together, man, it's a real pleasure.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt.
Cool. Thank you.